Hi friends, thank you for watching The Source. I have a wonderful guest today who's the role model on how to change your life. He's gone from being Sharif to being Mordechai Yosef. He's gone from the Kardashians to Kabbalah, from the West Coast to the Western Wall. Really honored to introduce Rav Mordechai Yosef ben Avraham. Rabbi, thank you so much for your time. Really, it's an honor. Like I said, it took some time to get here, but we've reached our destination.
Thank you for having me on this amazing podcast conversation. You've been doing, and really, just really appreciate being here.
Rabbi, you've been through many lives, many incarnations. I'm looking at your journey, and you had many titles. You have a long resume. You were born in Los Angeles. You were a film producer. You were a social media expert, a clothing designer, a fashion journalist, a music promoter. You actually even ran for Congress. So you have a really long resume. And a lot of people would say, some would say that you've lived the American dream. You are the American dream. And yet, it wasn't enough. You put all that on the shelf because you found Judaism. It appealed to you in a way that all those other things couldn't. You converted, you became Jewish, now you live in Israel. And Rabbi, I need to ask you, how the heck did you get there?
Yeah, that's a question I'm still trying to figure out. Like, I wake up sometimes and I'm just like, how did this happen? Like, how did I get here? So I have that moment a lot in life in general. And the thing is, how did I get here? I think years ago.
How and the why?
Say it again.
How and the why?
The thing is, like, I really, when you really look at like the whole construct, like how, a person gets to a particular point in life, no matter what it is, you have to look at the context. And I think, a lot of it has to do with the religious freedoms that exist in America and how that openness affected a lot of the desires of African Americans to want to seek truth, right? Because much of the reality that they were given, in America was, under a specific construct, and 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 I to want to understand, the meaning behind things and the truth behind things. And I know this is what I'm being told, but what else is going on? That desire, I think, I kind of, as you can hear the sirens in the background, I think that desire is something that, like, I inherited, and I think in my particular generation, under the social, conditions that I grew up underneath, allowed me to, really pursue Judaism and pursue the Torah.
Okay, so from what I read, you went to school with the Kardashians. You were, I think, only 3 African Americans in your school, in a very white school, very affluent school. I think it was just you and your brother among the 3. And where does Judaism come into all of this? With all of its rules, you had all this freedom. You had all of America and all of its opportunities before you. And then you just pivoted, which is strange because even Jews within Judaism don't pivot to keep more commandments, to keep the Torah. And you were living a life where there were a lot of other pervasive and persuasive things that could throw you in another direction completely. And certainly, there are much better advertisements on TV than, hey, become Jewish. So why?
I think I think in the question you really gave like a really like amazing answer. It's like the fact that I grew up affluent, right? Like, everybody wants to, want to make money. Everyone wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to have a certain level of influence. All these different things. Like, this is what we want, right? And the root of it, if we're totally honest with it, the root of why we want these things is because we feel once we obtain them, we're going to be fulfilled, right? We're going to be fulfilled. Like once I do this, I'm going to be happy. Once I make this amount of money, I'm going to be happy. Once I have this car, I'm going to be happy. Once I have this new iPhone, I'm going to be happy. But we live in these frame of desires. When I just have my coffee, I'm going to be happy, right? We have this, and we live in this way. When we live in this way, and the thing is, it's saying that when you grow up in that and you experience it, and you're like, wait, I'm here, but I'm this what they said was going to make me happy isn't actually making me happy. Living in this environment isn't necessarily making me happy. Having these material things isn't necessarily making me happy. And it's just like, oh, wow. Okay. So, I mean, that doesn't mean they don't have pleasure connected to them and there's not experience connected to them, but it's short lived. Right. And so you start to ask yourself, say, well, if society is telling me that if I get these particular things and it's going to make me happy, then I achieve these things, and then they don't live up to the promise, then what's the purpose of life? Then why am I here? What's the purpose? Like, what is this whole thing about? Like, why is the world designed the way that it is? Why is the earth round? Whatever. The point is just saying like these things. And so, I was introduced to spirituality from a Jewish standpoint through the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles, and it came in like in a random set of experiences. I met someone who was going there, whatever. But a lot of the questions that many of the Kabbalists and the deep esoteric thinkers of the Jewish people, those questions were things that were very deep inside of my heart and my soul, and the pursuit for those questions and the different technologies like Shabbat and tefillah praying and tefillin, things we wrap, all these things that we do, the holidays, eating kosher, all these things are all tools to bring us closer to God, to that truth, not like this person, but like an actual truth of clarity. And
Well, you're speaking about it in terms of a technology, and I'm just wondering why you would use that phraseology. I mean, when I think of Shabbat or Judaism, I don't think of it as a technology as you do. So I think often as technology, like my Alexa, I plug it in, I say, Alexa, play Bon Jovi for me. So why is Judaism a technology?
well, exactly. You actually gave the answer in your point. It's like you're saying that like a technology is like you say like something's plugged in and then you say, hey, I want to hear Bon Jovi, right? But it's not like you just want to hear Bon Jovi. You want to connect the feeling of the song, the feeling that you get from the song that Bon Jovi made, right? It's not just the song, it's the feeling of the song, right? So that technology allows you to plug into that experience. So in terms of the idea of peace and the idea of renewal, God created this technology called Shabbat that we have all these specific things that we plug in with. And the things that we plug in with the things that we plug in with, allow us to connect our soul, our mind, our heart, our body into this experience of Shabbat, this experience of Manuka, this experience of rest. And so we're able to plug into that and then experience this like amazing, elevated spiritual experience on what would be a Saturday, Friday evening type of thing. Adonai Hoshiana. Ana Adonai Hoshiana. Ana Adonai Haslichana.
This process of maybe becoming Jewish, and by the way, did your whole family become Jewish or just you? I know
No.
you have a brother.
Just me, sister. Yeah, I have three brothers and one sister. Is five of us total. I converted like in 2013, so it's been a little bit of almost like a decade.
Exactly.
And with the shell, a decade, I survived. And then my sister, she actually, her and her husband did a conversion earlier this year. And so they converted too, but they're in Atlanta. I didn't have anything to do with it. It's just, you know,
That's what you think.
well, I'm saying obviously, like my experience, but they were also came through the Kabbalah Center too. It wasn't just me. My whole family eventually came, and it was a whole big experience. So
actually interesting, and to insert myself, and I don't usually do that in an interview, but I grew up in a Jewish family, but we weren't religious at all. And then one day, some people from the Kabbalah centers, some emissaries from there came along with a whole bunch of books to sell. And I grew up learning that, if Jews come to your house or they're asking for a donation, that you have to give. So they show up at my house, I buy the books, I'm heading straight toward the garbage, about to throw it in, except I take a quick peek and I'm like, you know what? This is interesting. So I sit down in the kitchen, start reading. It makes its way up to my room, and the rest is history. And that book actually, and the Kabbalah Center were also responsible for me making tshuva, for being about tshuva. So we have a lot in common, more than you know, but I'll save that for off the record. So you had a cool life, right? You went out, you had fun, you went dancing, you're a good looking man, you were young. What was hard to give up? What was really the hardest thing to let go of?
You know the thing I was thinking about the other day. I was thinking about like when you think about it, because it's a lot of talk of like we're in wars and we're in wars right now, and you hear a lot of talk about like nuclear warfare and all these like random types of things, and you think about like if someone was like the president of a country, or like say you're the president of the United States, there's like 70, if not over 100 nuclear warheads pointed at your country. You know what I'm saying? And you wake up to that reality, and that reality is part of everything else that you're dealing with, right? You are in charge of the situation, and it has all these different dynamics. Or like a person is a billionaire, right? They're a billionaire, and people know about it. Whatever. There's a lot of things that they worry about. They worry about people trying to kidnap him, and this, and all these different challenges, people lawsuits, all these different things. It's a different type of reality, that's based around um, the circumstance, right? And so I think like becoming Jewish is not so much about losing anything as it is about like elevating into reality and taking on a new set of responsibilities, right? Because now, like, when you become Jewish, it's not just like, oh, like people convert to Islam, people convert to Christianity, people convert to a lot of other things, right? There's all types of ceremonies that allow people to now be identified in particular groups. But converting to Judaism is not about converting to Judaism. Judaism is something that was really manifested in its completion, after the destruction of the Second Temple, in Babylon, and when we were able to organize our Talmud and these different things. But this spiritual idea that Moshe was on Mount Sinai bringing down, this existed since the beginning of time, since Adam Rishon, to Noah, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, Yaakov, I mean, yeah, all the way to Yosef, right, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and so this thing has been going on forever. And so when I, as a human being, take myself and I plug myself into that spiritual reality that's been going on since the beginning of time, I become one with the Jewish people, right? And so it's not just like this idea like I joined a club or anything like that. My whole essence of who I am, the time that I function on is different. My physical anatomy had to be changed. My eating, my dietary, my ambitions, my motive, everything about who you are changes because the Jewish people are different. Hashem made it in a way that we're different and distinct than all the other nations in the world, right? For various reasons. And so when a person joins that nation, they're taking themselves out of the collective and putting themselves into the specific.
Okay, so it sounds to me like first thing when you are committing yourself to a Jewish Orthodox life, you need to let go of your ego. So having done that, the things that you might have missed actually were just not there anymore. Is there anything about you that you look at in those old pictures? You look at the old life and say, "Hey, I was a dude, I was hot," and like you really miss it. Is there anything you miss?
Not really. I feel like I'm doing everything that I did before, but like advanced.
Okay, I like that answer. It's
You
great.
know what I mean? Like I'm saying, I like for example, like if a person when people make money, right? When you make money, you eat different, right? Like you go out, you eat at different restaurants. You eat like when you. I mean, everyone has those times in their periods when they're just making a lot of money, you know. And it's like they just get into this place where it's like you everything has to be fresh, everything has to be this, and you only want specific things or whatever. So it's more like I'm just eating at a higher level. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm eating at a higher level. Like I'm eating. Like, do I miss other food? If the food was good, God would permit it to me. You know what I mean? Like if it was, you know what I mean? So it's like it's not, or even my clothes. It's like the thing is saying like even with clothes, it's like I do want to wear suits like I do, but I want to maybe wear more designer suits in the future. Right now, I have like Israeli suits, which are nice and they get the job done. But the point is just saying that I want to wear designer suits, and that's still very much kosher and holy and as well. So you don't really lose at anything with Judaism. It's just you apply it to a reference to the creator. You know what I mean?
No, I really like your answer because a lot of people might feel that if they become more religious, that they lose themselves. But the truth is that when you embrace the Torah, you really find yourself and you elevate yourself to a higher level of existence. Okay, we had some technical difficulties there. Rabbi, we're back. I think my last question was, what was the hardest part for you? What did you feel like you had to really give up of the life that you knew?
Actually, that's a very good question. The biggest part, the hardest thing it was for me to get rid of and accept was, like my new life, meaning that like my goals were different. Like when I first came to yeshiva, I was like, in my like early 30s. You know what I mean? I wasn't like a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old guy, 23-year-old guy, 24-year-old guy. Like I've worked in a corporate world. I've, done really humongous deals. I've influenced a lot of the culture that the kids that are coming to yeshiva are trying to get away from. You know what I mean? Which is kind of like an interesting thing. And so, and I'm sitting in the class, trying to figure out how to learn a Gemara, right? And saying like, okay, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I not just doing another deal in LA right now? Why am I not doing another movie? Why am I not finding the next big, whatever? Like why am I sitting here trying to understand what this verse in this Gemara is saying in this Mishnah, right? Like, what is the Mishnah trying to tell me, and what's the Gemara? Like this whole experience, right? And in wanting to connect, like it's not like I felt like I wanted to know. I wanted to know how this thing worked, and being put in between, should I continue on my professional ambitions, or should I put my time into learning about this wisdom that I've invested my life into? And going through that difficulty and like sitting at home at the end of learning all day and saying like, why am I doing the right thing? What should I be doing? Because I ran for Congress before I came to Israel. Like I was the Republican nominee. Like I was there. I had a good, thing. Like it's not even about winning as a Republican. Just being the Republican guy in California itself is a place. And there's a lot of things going on around that. And so anyway, so I was, I was going to continue that, and so I had to battle that with myself to say like, what's more important to me in my future, to learn how to learn the Torah in yeshiva, or to continue on, my career ambitions. And I opted to focus on my learning, but that was a very letting go of my whole career in essence.
It's
And
amazing.
yeah, it shows how much I love Hashem. It really does.
Okay, so Rabbi, I read that, and maybe the article was wrong, but you had some resistance before you decided to convert to Judaism. I mean, you were into it for a long time. You studied at the Kabbalah Center, I think, for 8 years. Your whole family did as well, or most of your family. But still, there was a resistance despite all this information, all this knowledge, all this appeal. So, my question to you is, what held you back from moving forward? And also, even more importantly, what was the convincing argument to get you over the line?
One of the things I'll say is, before I converted, I was with Rabbi Moshe Hafuta of Torah based in Los Angeles. And I spent, a lot of time with him, but a lot of time before that I spent at the Kabbalah Center. I spent it, with the Rav Berg and his kids, Yehuda, and a lot of people. I grew up with him. I was there for 8 years. And one of the things that really affected me when I was there is that the Rav was able to, show this reality of, what the world was in terms of like seeing like how kind of like dark everything was, but at the same time showing this like tremendous potential that existed in the world. So it wasn't about like, oh, just being religious and doing these precepts and keeping these laws. It was like, no, like you want to make your vessel pure so you could go out and affect change in the world, and you could bring light into the world, and you could bring light where there's darkness, and you could transform yourself and these things. And I'm just like, 22 years old, 23 years old, hearing this, and I'm like, whoa, this is insane, and this Kabbalah, these meditations, and this Zohar, and all this stuff. I'm just like, dude, this is next level. Coming from the suburbs. My mom's an academic. My whole family's highly educated people. So it's like it's not like, academia was like some like big deal to me. Something to aspire to. It was like it was much more than that. But the point is just saying that. Um, it was that ability to utilize the spirituality and the directions of the Torah to make your life part of the positive change and contribution in the world. So that was the thing that got me in, was to be a part of this positive change. Oh, by the way, you keep Shabbat. Oh, by the way, you have Rosh Hashanah. By the way, you have Pesach. But it was about being a part of this positive change and this holy change of bringing light into the world, and it just resonated with me on such a deep level.
So, Rabbi, this is your book. I read it. I loved it. I was truly inspired by it. It's so deep. It's so meaningful. And anyone actually who's searching for the truth, there's a lot to hang on to in this book. But I will start with the cover. I'll start with your name. Before you converted, your name was Sharif. Now your name is Mordechai Yosef ben Avraham. And in Judaism, we believe that a person's name, their Jewish name, carries their destiny. So why did you pick those names, Rabbi?
So let's start with the latter part of it. So Ben Avraham is a name that when males go through their spiritual transformation, to join the Jewish people, to become one with the Torah, one with Hashem, they take on the last name Avraham, because Avraham is in essence, the originator of this prototype individual that comes from a place that's seemingly far away from holiness, but through a series of experiences in life becomes attached to holiness, right? Abraham's father, Korach, I mean, I'm sorry, Terach, sorry. Terach, he was like a chief idol maker. Like they were like humongous into idol worship, right? And Abraham became known as a person who fought against idol worship, right? So he came from a particular reality, and then he transformed himself to see that reality came from was not, was not kosher, right? And so most people who go through the process of joining the people have that Abraham, and if they're a woman, Sarah, experience, right? And so the name Abraham, so we take on that spiritual journey, that path, and we link ourselves with Abraham as our father. And so Mordechai was a name that was suggested to me actually when I was at the Kabbalah Center through the Rav. And the name Mordechai is, the way it was explained to me is like the word more. You could break Mordechai into two parts, more and Dechai, right? So more was one of the 11 spices that was used to cleanse the temple. So more is a mechanism of cleansing, right? But it also has the same gematria as the word sofek, which means doubt in Hebrew, right? So this idea of cleansing doubt, right? And Dechai in Aramaic means to cleanse, right? And so my teacher said to me that this name, every time I hear the name Mordechai, that it should remind me and it should remove an aspect of doubt that I have about my contribution in this generation.
Okay? Your book is called Mind of the Black Jew. It's not called A Black Man's View on Judaism. It's not called The Jewish View on Judaism. So both adjectives, black and Jew, they define you. They mean a lot to you. I want to know how you feel that your experience growing up in America as an African American has actually made you a better Jew, and vice versa.
The thing is I think African Americans have a very, very unique opportunity when it comes to spirituality. Because, one of the things, and this is my personal opinion, one of the things that blocks sometimes the progression of people is culture, right? Because culture kind of creates this kind of like finite articulation of how experiences should go and traditions. And these things are very important. These things are very, very important, especially when it comes to practicing the Torah. But I'm saying as in terms of world society, there's a lot of different cultures that reject new technologies and innovations because of cultural, outlooks. And so African Americans, when we think about it, like so much of our identity has been a response to the conditions of North America, right? And so when it comes to like our relationship with God, we've never really been able to articulate it ourselves. Christianity was something that, most of us, our ancestors learned about on the plantation. Islam was something that kind of came as like, in the 60s and 70s, it's kind of like part of like Black liberation theology and that movement and these types of things. But it was still something that was like Arab, something that was, you had to change your name to Muhammad or Abdullah. You know what I mean? It was still something over there. And so, the Torah allows a human being to connect directly to God, not to a culture, not to a geographical place, not to, a ethnicity or anything, directly to God. And not even saying, even when we learn the Torah, we're not learning the history of the world. We're learning the history of the spirituality of the world. And that's why Adam and Eve are such central characters in the beginning of that, because they were spiritual beings.
Oh, we had a technological. Okay, you're there?
What were you going to say? Say it again.
No. There was a technological,
Oh, there was a
mishap.
glitch. Okay.
Yeah, now we're good. We're good.
So I was going to say, like, for the African American experience, the idea of Adam and Eve, right? The Torah is giving us the spiritual chronological history of planet Earth to show us how we are where we are at today, and it goes all through the Tanakh, through the teachings of the Talmud, all the way to current day writers. But it's one link to understand the spiritual progression of the world. And so for me, I think for African Americans, I think Judaism is something that is very, intriguing, because it allows us to establish our relationship with God as an individual and connect ourselves to the goal of the Torah itself. which has this enveloping idea through communicate to our sages of world peace and unity and oneness and justice and freedom and all these other type of ideas.
Okay, myself personally, as somebody who tries to bring Jews closer to Judaism, an answer that I often get is, I'm a good person. That should be enough for Hashem. I have a good heart. I'm nicer than the religious guy next door and a lot of other religious people I know. So why isn't that justification enough to dismiss the entire Torah and just actually be a good person?
The thing is two factors around it. It's number one, if a person says that it matters if they're a good or bad person, that thought itself should say, okay, so what does it mean that I am a good person, and who am I being good to, and why is it good to be good, right? Why does that exist? And maybe someone could say, oh, well, because I don't want to break the laws of the city or the state or the country. And another person may say, hey, I believe in the laws of the universe, and all that those things are true. But the idea of living this life, right? Because we're talking about a lifetime. We're saying, like, am I in this lifetime just to be like a good person? Like, is that what I'm here to do? Just to be? And there's nothing wrong with being a good person. But like, am I in this life for that? Or is there a different reason why God put my soul into this body, into this reality right now? Like, what is the reason behind that? Like, what if my I have a whole purpose that I'm supposed to fulfill, and because I'm not asking what it is, I'll never find out, and I end up wasting a whole life doing things that I'm not really even supposed to be doing. That things that are not even connected to my purpose, right? So this idea of like saying like I'm here in this world to do something. My life matters. I'm here to contribute. I mean something. And so my job in this lifetime is to figure out what is the most optimum way to share what makes me unique with the world. And obviously I have to find out what makes me unique in the world. And so the idea of having this spiritual system called Judaism allows us to get there. We're not going to get there spiritually through, university never claimed to, spiritually transform us. You know what I mean? It never
And
did
much
that.
less than that these days.
Exactly. So it's just saying so I get the idea of being a good person in this, and I'm saying even for myself, I said, okay, you know what? I never had to convert to Judaism. Okay, you don't have to convert to Judaism to go to you don't have to convert to Judaism to have a life, to meet your soulmate. You don't have to convert to Judaism to become a wealthy person. You don't have to convert to Judaism to have good health or have a good family, anything. You don't need to do that. The one reason that a person should convert to Judaism and take on the Torah is to take on a spiritual system that's going to allow them to live a life and experience a reality beyond imagination.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach V'Lam Vayed, Baruch Atah Adonai Him HaKalam, Asher B'Kabal Mekomi Natan Torto, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen.
Okay, so on Facebook, I'm known as the Queen of Questions. I have a few more questions. We can try and gloss over them quickly. You're not born into the Jewish faith. You are born into the Black community. And I don't know if growing up you had certain stereotypes about Jewish people, what you thought they were, how they looked, how they behaved. But today we are facing a lot of anti-Semitism from the Black community, and Kanyewest is a significant and big vocal example of that. And personally, I feel that if I would sit down with him and have coffee with him, we could be friends, and that he would love Jews, or I can enlighten him. I really think we'd be friends. So somebody who came from a different background, I'm just curious what you think we should do differently. I mean, we've been boycotting people who are anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. We combat them on social media, on real media, but it doesn't seem to be all that effective. And my question to you is, what do you think we could do better?
Yeah, I mean that's another great question. The thing is on that point, the thing we got to keep in mind is that we're not just talking about the Jewish people, we're talking about Israel, the nation state, right? And right
Okay.
now, Israel is, as a nation state, is changing the dynamic of the world. It's changing partnerships. It's changing how business is being done, how money is being transacted, innovations, everything, right? And so, anytime a person or a company or a country, anybody, anytime you're going up, the haters are going to go crazy, right?
Okay.
And right now, the Jewish people, at the end of the day, are going up with the eighth largest economy. We have one of the highest birth rates in the world. It's just it's a booming time to be a Jew, and so the world sees us and it sees our success. And the success of the Jewish people reminds the non-Jew that a lot of the ideas that they were told about themselves and even maybe their spiritual system is not true, right? Because the basis of Christianity is saying that, like, oh, well, the Christians are there because, God left the Jews, right? And Islam is there because Islam says, well, God's not with the Christians, right? So if the Jews are saying, like, no, God never left us, this is part of the whole thing. We had to go through diaspora. We had to go through this whole, ring around the rosy type situation, and end up back in, Eretz Israel and build. And it's like now you're seeing that, and now that upsets you, right? And then you look at all the abuse that all the nations have done, to the Jewish people, that they've done to our ideas, to our way of life, right? And then they have to look at themselves and say, well, either we were wrong the whole time, or we were right, and we're still right? And so as we advance as people, it just upsets them because they have a narrative of the world and it's based off of us either not being here or us not being successful. And that's why they love, mainstream society loves Jews when they're not very Jewish, right? It loves Jews
Right.
when we abandon, our modesty, when we abandon our values, our morals, our model. They are okay with us. But once we, proclaim our identity as being separate than theirs and our goals as being separate than theirs, then we get ostracized. So I think what we're experiencing now is a world that sees the Jewish people going up, seeing the nation of Israel going up, and it's affecting them on many levels, on a spiritual level, on economic levels. Like for example, if there's a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, all these different people, they're out of business because they only have strength because they have been able to organize a constituents that agrees with them in the Middle East. But once other countries fall in line and money starts talking, those people that they do have are also going to leave. So it's a very tricky time. So I would look at the resistance that we see on college campuses and in mainstream society as just being an example of people who are confused about the existence and the continued success of the Jewish people.
Okay, so another question for you is, because I like to Makariv Jews, bring them back to Judaism, and I know a lot of people who are borderline on the fence, but then they'll say, I have a girlfriend who's not Jewish, or I like lobster, or I like to shop on Shabbat, so don't give me Shabbat, don't give me kosher. It's not for me. So what do you feel is a better driving force than do a mitzvah to get Jews back to Judaism, to get them to take it on more seriously?
So yeah, so um, you
That
know,
thought.
in terms of like Jewish observance, it's something that you have to have a lot of compassion about because Jews have been through so much. Like, and I relate to it as an African American, right? Because like if you look at the whole experience of being African American, and I'm only speaking just from the perspective of the brainwashing the dehumanization of us as people and our attributes. I mean, they used to say that we were unattractive and ugly because we had bigger lips and wider noses and all these other things. This is what happened in North America, right? And so that's why there was such a strong movement with Black people saying, like, I'm Black and I'm proud, you know, because the mainstream world was telling them, like, no, you're ugly, you're cursed, you have this bad thing, you're Black, it's a terrible thing. And so in that strength to kind of make some sense of reality, I think is something that, you know, the Jewish people, you know, who live in diaspora could really gain from. Is this idea of saying, like, hey, you know what? How much has this system and this reality that we've been surrounded by for, you know, thousands of years, how much has it affected us? How much has it affected our connection to ourselves, to our identity, to our self-perception, to our psychology? And how does that connect to this experience of my Judaism? Because if I say, like, hey, you know what, it's not important if I am with a Jewish woman, is that a perspective because that's coming from my place of personal truth, or is that a byproduct of the conditioning that I've experienced in the diaspora and my family's experience and my family's experience? Even if they marry Jewish, still those effects of the making my Judaism not significant, eating kosher. You know, it's like, well, why should I eat kosher? Who cares? Everybody else around me doesn't eat kosher. You know,
Right.
everyone else is doing the thing. So why should I do it? Right. And so it's like these types of challenges that a person has to ask themselves. And if I wanted to keep kosher, why is it so hard? Why do I feel so much resistance in myself? What is going on with me that this action creates this type of response out of me? What potentially can I learn from it? You know, and so these are the things, you know. I mean, but, you know, people have to. You can't convince someone to do something that's true to them. You know what I mean? Like you can't convince someone to do something that's true to them. And it's like, you know, with people, when it comes to observers, if somebody wants to learn about it, okay, then you could give them information. You can say, hey, this is my experiences, this is what I did, whatever. But a person who doesn't want to do it and a person who doesn't want to know, you know, that's where the light of people like ourselves who do keep the Torah, that's us keeping it ourselves and being sincere about it and being besimcha and being happy and projecting positive light into the world. That's where that comes in, because the desire has to be aroused, right? Like you can't just go
The
to a
desire
person.
has what? I didn't
The
hear that
des-
part. The desire.
yeah, the desire has to be aroused, right? Like a person has to have a
Okay.
sincere desire to connect. And I think that sincere desire is aroused when people like ourselves are keeping the Torah and we're being sincere and we're treating each other with respect and we're treating each other with love and we're being patient with each other. And we're accepting that all of us have unique processes of transformation and correction. And, you know, from that space, you know, we want to engage with each other, right? And that light that comes out of that can affect our fellow Jew who's far away, and all of a sudden he feel it is, and it's like how it may not be equatable in scientific terms, but when we do mitzvahs, it sends an effect, and it protects and it heals and it inspires people in ways that are not calculated by, you know, traditional science. So that's for that part.
Rabbi, I can't begin to thank you. You're so worth the wait. And I don't know if I let you say everything that you wanted to say. You're welcome to say more on any front. Thank you for your book. Thank you for this interview. And thank you for you. What's the next book you're going to do?
You know, the thing is now what I'm really thinking about is really doing a book on my spiritual journey, you know, to the Torah. Like I really do. I wanted to write more like technical books and academic type books, but I just feel like it's so important to not just write like my life story, but really put it in a context where everyone should go on their own spiritual journey. Jewish, non-Jewish, says, I think this is the path of world peace and bringing Mashiach. is this idea of when people say, you know what, I want to find out what the truth of the world is for me. And they leave the construct that they were presented with to find their construct. Now, they may find overlap or they may accentuate the construct, but everyone should go on their own spiritual journey. And so I want to write my story in a way that empowers people, like a manual on how to reassess life and to go on their own path of defining their own truth.
Okay, it sounds great. If you ever need a ghostwriter, here I am.
It's
Rabbi, thank you.
the beginning of a relationship.
Thank you so much. Thank you really very much. May Hashem bless you and your family always, and you should only go from success to success.
Amen. Same to you. Same to you. Same by you. All the best.